Did you know the book, Charles? What was your first reaction?
I didn't know the book. I knew Daphne Du Maurier, but I think the thing. I think it was less than 30 pages to me. The premise is so not ridiculous, but it's so astonishing that when you read it and see someone goes into a room and sees themselves and what will they do next, you think, how can an audience, how will they ever believe any of this, basically? And that from a writing point of view, to me, the challenge, and I mean, in the end, you take things because you don't know how to do them, not because you do know how to do them, was how could you possibly make this frankly insane situation plausible? And yet it had to be, if it wasn't plausible, you knew people would switch off. There's no reason to watch it if it doesn't, I mean, maybe you disagree. but if you're not pulled from scene to scene, it has nothing other than its own storytelling skill, which is obviously what Du Maurier is so brilliant at. And that was a kind of challenge I sort of couldn't resist.
You did then change it quite a lot. The book set in France, it's got quite a strong plot about the resistance. The characters are quite different. Why did you decide to change it?
Well, the decision not to take an ITV film crew to France was entirely creative and not remotely connected with the economics of television. But truthfully, that lots of things are different between a book and a film because you can see into the eyes of the person who's talking. One of the, frankly, complications about doing the book as it is written, she wrote it because she went on a kind of who do you think you are trip to France to find out what the Du Mauriers were about as a family. They were, you'll be surprised to learn, glass makers or glass blowers. And being the professional, literally professional novelist she was, she made a book out of the trip. But the premise of the book requires you to believe in an Englishman who speaks remarkably good French to a French family who believe he's French. And in an ITV version of that, it would be an Englishman speaking English in French to a Frenchman speaking English. I mean, it seemed an impossible sort of... So there wasn't any real debate about that. The key change... Well, there were two key changes. Well, key ones, I think. It was the ending, which is different. In the book, if I can characterize it this simplistically, if it's a story about a good man entering a bad man's house, the good man comes out, the bad man goes back in again. And I didn't feel, because you didn't really see what happened next, that was very satisfying for an audience. And I was given a certain amount of courage by Daphne's granddaughter, Grace, who gave us an account of a conversation with her grandmother about her... I'm minusculely twisting this in my own service, I have to confess, but basically saying the ending doesn't work and I should have killed one of them. So I took that as a key. I've said the speech in front of Grace and Daphne's son, and they haven't stood up and said, liar! So I think it's fair enough they said roughly that.
And Alice, when you came to it, was it a work you knew? What attracted you to doing the film?
Oh, well, I actually had no idea. I'd never read it. But, I mean, it was just... who would turn it down? It was an incredible opportunity. I'd just come out of drama school. This part on the page, she seems like such a delicate kind of, almost a nuisance actually to everyone. And yet she has this wonderful journey to be able to come to life just because there's someone who actually pays attention to her and shines his light on her, and she really does. She comes to light and to life, and she grows, and then it's just so tragic, and then but also very funny as well. So, great.
Did you, in your mind, did you decide whether she? I mean, the thing that we as the audience have to believe is that the family all go along with, accepting the imposter. And in fact, there's just been the film The Imposter, which in a funny way is a similar sort of theme, though obviously he didn't look like the person. But did you, in your mind, decide whether you knew that there was a switch, or did you think it was the same man changed?
No, I thought he had changed, and I think that's what made it so much more tragic, is she thinks, she kept saying, I'm so happy, I can't believe this is happening, and then she realises, oh no, there's a reason, there's a it's a ploy to all of this, and it's that sudden realization when she realizes that all of that was just not true and that he'd been lying. But obviously she had seen massive changes in him. Yeah.
Andrew, it's an interesting premise, isn't it, that none of us know what another person would do given the opportunity. And strangely, when I watched it, I thought slightly of Moriarty. It may have been partly because I was coming to see you. But I mean, that moral debate about what we will be pushed to do is an interesting one. Was that part of what attracted you to it?
Yeah, I suppose that part of it is interesting. I think for me, what chiefly attracted me to it was Charles gave me my first ever job in London.
He owed me.
No. And in Longitude. So I was very delighted to get the opportunity to work with him again. And
What's he like to work for? What pulled you back?
Remember what we said?
Yes, I do. Well, I think you always know with Charles that it's going to be he's going to do something very interesting. I'm absolutely amazed at the job that Charles has done on this. I think it's a really difficult job to try and make that idea of making it a plausible thing that people just don't go, what the hell is this? Halfway through it, I think it's a very fine line to tread, and I think he's done that really, really beautifully.
And was part of the appeal for you playing a sort of a good character?
Yes, I think. Yeah,
because you have become slightly famous as a very unpleasant character.
Yes, yeah, I think that's absolutely. Yeah, I've tried to steer clear of psychopaths for the past couple of jobs, but also it was the cast, to get to work with Matthew, and a lot of my stuff was with Sheridan Smith, who's an actress I've long admired. So yeah, I was just happy to be involved.
Jodie, is it difficult for a cast to sort of think themselves into a period? I mean, it's very specifically set, this piece, and you know exactly where you are from the minute it starts. Does that make a difference that your choices?
Well, it's a huge pleasure really to be able to kind of steep yourself in the period, and we did kind of look at diction and accents and actually I kind of thought I had a huge amount of fun with that in a way. And that was part of the attraction really. So yeah, no, I'd say that's kind of, it's great. I love when you get to kind of inhabit, an entirely different world and a period sort of down to the most minute kind of detail. It's a thrill being able to recreate that.
Where were you actually inhabiting? Were you inhabiting warm place? I mean, it feels like that, but
yeah, we shot most of it in Woodworth. Yeah. So we were kind of
what
mostly.
Was that army rank? That place, UK Dolder.
Mad. I think when you use the words like steeped and inhabit, you need to understand that. And Jodie was a particular victim of this, but that this film was made incredibly fast, and I think it's fair to say that 85% of Jodie's part was done between 4 minutes to 7 and 7
You've
o'clock.
completely blown my cover now, Charles. I can't believe it. It's been so convincing, that.
Miraculously so, I might add. But I mean what is extraordinary about this group is that they have, out of a wide group of characters, create creatures of such substance, and I think such depth with such enormous speed as well as grace. I'm totally in their debt because of that.
how quickly exactly was it shot? How long?
Very
did it
quickly.
take?
Very, very quickly. Okay, you said lower than that.
24 days.
24 days.
It's fast.
And did that take into account doing the filming with Matthew where he's playing himself? I mean, how
Yes,
did
weirdly,
you do?
the schedules never being what you want them to be. We did all the key scenes, including the scene in the Gents was the first afternoon. Literally, it was hour 5 of the shoot, because economics is what runs film, and you'll not be surprised to learn there's only one actor in that scene, and it makes economic sense to use the scenes with one actor at one end of the script to the other. So that all those early twin scenes were the first things we shot, which was scary, frankly. I mean, because they required a degree of of technical construction. If you look at if you go back and look at the Alec Guinness film, because you become obsessed with how you present the twin. In the trailer, which is the bit that's on YouTube, you'll see the two of them sitting at the table in the bar talking to each other, and as they talk, the glasses jump across the table in the trailer. And that is the kind of thing that you sweat over in trying to make those sort of those doppelganger scenes work.
Yeah, and for Matthew doing that and that sort of nuance of character that I think he really pulls off. I hope other people agree. On the very first day, without pantomiming, keeping it subtle, keeping those characters very different, I think was absolutely amazing.
Extraordinary. And with the whirring camera as well, Charles, I mean, was that very much how you saw it from the first bit or was that sort of improvised because it was the first day?
Sorry, which one?
The whirring camera sort of the camera circling him in the initial scenes, was that always how you imagined it?
Actually, and this is the rub. He's circling, and the cameras in that instance had to be still because of the technique. But no, in fact, that was the scene that I wrote first, and I wrote as an audition really, because one of the curious things about the moment you see yourself is it's a double take basically, and it's kind of unshootable because you go, oh my God, who's that? And how do you make that into a scene? And really, what you get there is a dance. You get a look, a double look, a second look, a walk in, the other one looks at the other one, the first one looks at the second one, in order to pull that out at a pace that we could appreciate exactly what was happening. But that was possibly the least improvised scene of all, because we had to plan it in order to, deal with. Get him, change his hair now. No, change his jacket. No, his tie's got to be a bit straighter. No, his hair's got to be left a bit. Okay, no, turn over. Don't move the camera.
It's all coming back to us now.
That wasn't me. That was the first assistant. I was really fast.
Jodie, do you think, I mean, it's interesting that Du Maurier has been so much adapted. I mean, are there qualities in her work that you feel are, that make her such a popular choice? I mean, it's odd talking about her in the context here of a Hitchcock season where you return to her over and over.
I kind of found, I didn't know much about her at all until I started the project, and I was kind of doing some prep reading and read a biography about her, and I started to realise how utterly fascinating she was, and her life was kind of extraordinary. I mean, obviously she had this kind of dual life and this dual identity, which I think is so much of what this particular novel is about. It's about duality, and it's about irreconcilable selves, if you like. And obviously she was bisexual, and she was an incredible woman of her time, and so I found all of that kind of quite an eye opener, because I had just associated her with these sort of rather kind of I just hadn't assumed that her life was quite that extraordinary. So yeah, I do. I think that she's a really, really fascinating writer, and I think somehow she does write books which actually have much more depth than is apparent to the eye at first, in a sense, and which are actually quite relevant. I mean, obviously, this originally being set in France, and so much about one could go on forever, but the duality of kind of French identity and during the war and what that meant nationally on a kind of more historical level.
There's something about this book, I think, which, without meaning to be rude, it's a book which is based on a simple idea, the idea of the life swap, and you feel that she had the idea and started to write the book without really knowing quite where it was going. But curiously, this book is packed with every obsession she ever had, basically, and it's an extraordinary portrait of her own marriage. It's an extraordinary portrait of her childhood. She's clearly a little girl. It's very much like her relationship with her father, Gerald, the actor, who was a complicated, difficult, sexually voracious father, basically, and that in a kind of a way she pushes so much of herself into this book. I think much more than almost any other story. It's filled with her, basically, and that is what I hope we tried to stay faithful to, even though there were elements of the story that were changed.